Well, good afternoon. My name is Art Lucero, and this is my partner here, Colleen. And our class is Connecting Your Church to the City. And so we're happy to have you here with us today, and just a little bit about background about ourselves so that you understand where we're coming from in the context of our ministries and therefore the things that we'll be sharing with you. First of all, I've been involved in multi-ethnic, multi-church ministry from 1977. So that was when I was first, shortly after coming to Christ, I became involved in a small Anglo congregation where in Pico Rivera, where the community was changing. At that time, it was 33% Hispanic. And boy, all the people of Pico thought that, Mexico was running over them and taking over. And so we were involved in that church as it began some of its transition. I came here to Talbot, did my master's on the evangelization of Hispanics by a church in a changing community. And of course, the 1980s was huge for immigration from Central America, particularly in El Salvador and some of the other countries where communism was just taking over those countries, and we had a huge influx of Latinos then. And so I studied 28 of the major denominations in the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area to see what those congregations were doing to gear up to minister to the Latino community and reach them with the gospel of Christ through their local established churches as well as their church planting agencies. From there, I eventually became the director of church planning for the fellowship of churches that I belonged to. My territory was from Fresno to the Mexican border, and I did a church planning. So I'd go to places like Biola. Masters wasn't, I guess Masters was going there. Azusa Pacific, and we would set up our booths during missions week, and we would try to recruit young men that were coming out and that were wanting to do church planning. One of the biggest criticisms that I received from my board of directors at that time was that I was putting more of an emphasis on planning Spanish-speaking churches than English-speaking churches, and I was reprimanded for that. And when they asked me why, I told them, I said, all the schools that I go to, the first questions that these graduates ask me is, so how much do you pay and what are the benefits? And I tell them, hey, we have no resources. You got to raise your own support or be a tent maker and get out and plant a church. And they'd say, no, see, I'm going to go talk to the next booth. And but the Latinos who had limited Bible college education were passionate and on fire for preaching the gospel, and they did not have a problem being tent makers and planting churches. So that is why it wound up that way. Following my stint with Bible Church Mission there, one of the things that I learned was that starting independent Spanish-speaking churches, and then of course I learned this about other immigrant churches, is it's very difficult to sustain that congregation. Because usually when you're dealing with an immigrant congregation, if they don't speak the language, if they don't have a professional career, if they're not entrepreneurial, they don't generate the income in order to be able to pay for facilities, to pay for a pastor's full-time salary. And so, the pastor has to continue to work. They got these little storefront churches that aren't suitable for church ministry. And so I started thinking, I said, look, there's got to be a way in which our established churches we can utilize those facilities in order to be able to plant more immigrant churches. And from my research here, my thesis here, we developed a concept that's called the Homogeneous Church Model. Now, when I was at school, the biggest conflict that there was in Christendom at the time was the homogeneous versus the heterogeneous advocates. And that was a big thing. Fuller was huge on the homogeneous unit principle. And of course, there were others on staff here at Talbot that were against it. They felt that the church needed to be ethnically diverse. And so one of the things that I realized was, why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be both and? And so what I advocated and I practiced in my ministry with Bible Church Mission was to develop what I refer to as heterogeneous churches. In other words, the church is heterogeneous in the overall local church, and it's one church with multiple staff, one treasury, one leadership board, but multiple language departments working together as one. And of course, it is homogeneous on the immigrant department level. So you could have services in English or Korean or Spanish or what have you, whatever the immigrant group happened to be that was in your community. So having left there, I started a ministry called Multicultural Ministry, hoping to work as a consultant to help churches work through that process, and nearly starved. So I went back to to local church ministry, and I'm on staff now at Sunrise Church. It is a mega church. We have about 5,000 on weekly attendance. There is no ethnic majority in the congregation. We have African Americans, whites, and Hispanics, as well as people from some of the Pacific Islands. And so that ministry, I've been there for the last 10 years, and working there and helping to promote multicultural, multi-ethnic church ministry from that position. So some of the things that I'll be sharing with you comes from my background in this line of work. But what I'd like to do is turn this microphone over to Colleen, who will share you a little bit about her background, and then she'll transition right into her presentation.
Yes.
Colleen?
Thank you. Hi. It's really a privilege to be here. It's a joy to be partnering with Art. I certainly respect how God has used him in the ministry. My name is Colleen Marks. I serve as the community pastor at a church up the street. It's called Whittier Area Community Church. And my background is someone of growing up in the city. I grew up in the city of Whittier, and I love Whittier. As a child, my heart broke for the needs of those around me. And what I didn't understand as a young girl was that the reason my heart broke for the needs around me is because God wires us that way. God wires us in a way to care about the things that matter to him. And so the journey of God meeting me in a transformational way, and then bringing me to a place where I get to serve the city I grew up in is pretty humbling on a lot of levels. So my credentials are as a Whittier youth. It's quite a long journey, but I was journalism major in college. When I was done with that major, I felt a steering to vocational ministry. And so God has charted that path. I've been on staff 6.5 years, and my job has evolved a lot. In the past few years, I have moved into this role as our community ministries pastor and bridge builder in our city. I'm privileged today to have some friends here who are liaisons, bridge builders. You'll get to meet them in a few minutes, who are on the front lines of how we can connect the church to the city. But it's great to be with you today. The context of our church, Whittier Area Community Church, our mission is following God and loving people. We're about 39 years old. Our weekend service attendance is about 2,600 people. The city of Whittier has about 86,000 people. That's not unincorporated. I'm looking forward to the census data and coming around the corner in February. But this drives us. Matthew 22:37 through 40. If you could read this with me, let's read this together. Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments." This scripture has been really transformational in my journey. Neighbor, the Greek term for neighbor is plesion, meaning those who are near us. So what does that mean? That means those next door. That means our family. That means those who God has placed in our communities around us. Our history as a church is that we've had a real engagement globally, very missionally, globally focused. But it has been a change in the hearts of the church over these past few years through anything I speak to has been God at work, God moving people, God moving us, transforming us. So as I share today, it's about what God has done through willing people. But it's been exciting to see the culture shift in that we can be missionaries in our city. And we're called to these things. And so one of the transforming parts for us was this question that we asked 5 years ago as a pastoral staff at our staff retreat. What can we do to impact our community for Christ? And it started with prayer and just brainstorming, what are some tangible things we can do to connect our church to our city? Next, we see the needs, let's do something about them. So from that time together, we brainstormed the pastoral leadership and talked through this, and we came up with this. Let's cancel church for a weekend and be the church. The church will leave the building. So began Serve Weekend. So 5 years ago, we, with the blessing of our senior pastor, Bill Ankerberg, he said, let's cancel church. We won't take an offering that weekend, which for many senior pastors and leadership is a risk. Closing the doors down, it's a risk for your entire weekend when the day-to-day operations cost something. But I admire our senior pastor so committed to our city and our community that after prayer we said, we need to do it. We need to cancel church and be the church. So let's show this video that just kind of captures a little bit about, this was in 2008, this was our third year in, but just gives you a handle of what it kind of looked like then, and it's evolved since. Thank you. Press the what?
Turn around and press dim on the...
Oh, on this.
Never mind, he did it.
Oh. Oh, they're around here. Thanks, Matt. Need you.
When individuals who aren't churched see us out there doing that and say, who are those people and what are they doing? Sometimes the answers really shock them, and they kind of start thinking about why would we be doing this? And that's the neat part, is we can tell them why. And sometimes that may lead to something where we may see them in church sometime, and when we're done with our projects and we're back to church on Sunday.
Just a portion of what I can give back to him. He's done so much for me. Using the gifts and abilities that he has given to me, I give back as an offering to him of my gratitude for his love, his grace, his everything.
I also want to say to Pastor Bill a big thank you, because he leads a church that really does follow God and love people.
Thanks. So to get where we were, we started with praying God to kind of take it back a bit. Where do you want us to go with this? This was a first step for us on some levels in trying something new. And so we started with prayer. From there, we went to the SAM model here as I lay it out, seeing the need. We looked within the needs of our church body because shouldn't we as the church reflect our community that we serve? So we looked at the needs of our church. With 2,600 people at the church and 86,000 people in the city, not everyone you can tell is at our church by any means. And so we needed to survey the needs of our community and get out of the church. Which was one of the exciting things, to leave the church and start surveying the needs. So seeing and assessing the needs. Once we got more of a handle on what are some of the needs by asking a lot of the questions, we were able to assess them and then eventually meet them, which was exciting, and eventually move to meet those needs. We picked up the phone and asked community agencies, people that we had been referred to who were in need. We asked, how can we help them? We asked, what are your biggest needs and how can we serve you? It was a real kind of canvassing of needs in our area. It was meetings. It was just introducing ourselves over the phone. Some of the calls I made were blind. Some of the calls I knew the people already. It was very cool because it fostered something new. It was the beginning of something beautiful for us as a part of where God was steering us and moving us as a church family. Where we landed with our first serve weekend is we came up with a list of some of the people groups, some of the people we felt led to serve based on canvassing, seeing the needs. And where we landed were homeless, widows, seniors, aid clients, local schools, the city of Whittier, young pregnant moms through Whittier Pregnancy Care Clinic, DCFS, women emancipated from the foster care system. You could imagine as you look at your city and kind of canvass the needs that these names would come up for you. Our senior pastor had penned the kind of the title he desired for us to move to eventually become a church without walls, that the doors would be wide open, that as we would serve the community, that they would feel comfortable coming to our church, that they would feel loved, valued, and treated with dignity. On a lot of levels, Serve Weekend was a catalyst for that for us, a move forward, a step of faith forward. And it was blind at the time. It was new for us. There were people involved in serving the community, but what we found is that within the culture of a church body, not everyone is engaged in service. Some people come and sit in the back. Some people are seeking. Some people have no affiliation with church. Some have been in ministry for years. And what we found is for many, this was a first step in serving. I'll never forget one of our leaders said, I can do this. We had a lot of training. And he said to me, Scott said, I never knew serving God could be this much fun. The aha moment for him was that God had gifted him in certain ways, in ways he hadn't been able to use his gifts before. So it was like the lights had gone on for Scott Steinman on a lot of levels. And he's one of our faithful servant leaders since the inception of that. What we also found is as people served the community, they grew in community in our church family. Again, it's easy to come in and out of church, depending on the size of your congregation, kind of your mission, those things. What we found is there created a real sense of community in the church. Relationships were formed. People got to make friends for the first time. And that was exciting to see. that was huge. I think one of the other aha moments for us was we would have a celebration service where we would invite people from our city that we served on Sunday night. So we canceled church for the weekend, and then Sunday night we would share the stories of what God has done. What was very moving to me are the stories of the people in the church that were in tears sharing, this is what God did. Or the people we serve sharing, this is what worked for us. And I think the beauty of that is seeing people being missionaries in our city. I serve God in my backyard, and this is what he did. And it wasn't about that person, it was about God at work and God getting the glory, which we know is how he's ushered this whole community ministries and moved us forward. The background in our context was our city mayor called us, and he, after we had done this a few years, he said, can we get other churches together? This is something I had been praying about, but it hadn't moved in that direction yet. And Mayor Joe Vinatieri, an awesome godly guy, contacted some church leaders and said, what if we did it together? Which was beautiful. So for the past 2 years, we're on our 5th year of doing this, but the past 2 years we have engaged in partnership with churches in our city, in our surrounding areas. There were 18 churches this past spring that partnered together, all different sizes, all different demographic, with the same unity of purpose to share the love of Christ in tangible ways. So that was really humbling to see. What we've seen from this has been seeing the needs of the city and seeing where God is at work. Through this, we have birthed relationships in our community that 5 years ago we didn't have. They maybe knew our name, and we maybe had a general idea of what they did, but they were in our backyard doing a great work. Some of them Christian-based, nonprofit, some not, serving people that we believe matter to God. And so we said, what can we do to partner with them? And so from this, through this whole Serve Weekend, has birthed the relationship. And I think that has been the beauty of this. The video you see is picking up leaves and painting. I think one of the biggest beautiful things is seeing the life to life. We know that God works in relationship. He transforms us through his work, through his people, through the church body. And so to see those things happen has been very humbling and exciting. Some of our community partners that we have felt very led to partner with are Whittier Rio Hondo AIDS Project. Just to get our context, we're engaged in the lives of HIV and AIDS clients in our city. They are very important to us. So they're from Serve Weekend. That was a birth of a great relationship. Come to Ministries is a Christian nonprofit organization serving families in recovery in our city. Another thing that has birthed the past few years in connecting the church to the city has been our Celebrate Recovery program. We all have hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Let's be gut honest. And so this opened the doors and kind of further tore the walls down of our church to say, come here, we all need each other, we need God's healing in this. So that was a next step for us, something that has birthed in these past few years. LA Mission, there's a significant investment there for us with our commitment to them. Each has a story that I won't go into. For First Day Homeless Coalition, we have felt compelled to bring the church to the city. So we bring worship services to their facility. It is not a Christian facility. They have asked us to come in, and we have God has built a great relationship there. So we go there, and they come to church on Sundays too. We have like a shuttling system. It's important for us to make church available to people. If we want our doors to be open wide, we need to help get them to church. And a lot of them, as you know, during these times of need, with 850 families in our East Whittier City School District homeless, we need to get outside of the church and help meet their needs. And so First Day Homeless Coalition has been a great partnership. Department of Children Family Services, we're seeing those who are pulled out of homes, or the main point of DCFS is to try and keep families together. But we know we know the biblical call of all of this, as we're to care for the widow and the orphan and those who need us, we need to be engaged in these things. From Maddie's Closet, a woman from our church started a not-for-profit. Her daughter died of cancer. And so her ministry is to go in with the love of Christ to CHLA, to move outside the church. So there's an engagement there. A cold weather shelter, you'll hear a little bit about this from Cindy, so I'm not going to go there. Job Quest Ministries, you'll hear a bit about that from Glen, but started with the need of the high unemployment rates and the realities of how can we help people in our community. Whittier Pregnancy Care Clinic, many young moms on the verge, soon-to-be moms on the verge of, should I abort my child or should I keep my child? And I'm frightened. And so one of our partners has been Whittier Pregnancy Care Clinic that our church founded quite a few years ago. Interfaith Food Center serves 1,000 families in our city in need. It's the second largest food pantry of its kind in Southern California, so we decided we needed to be engaged. If people aren't getting the food to eat, a lot of the times they're questioning, where is God if I don't have food? If I don't have shelter, a lot of the conversations I'm having with people are, where is God in my pain? Last week, we had a homeless couple at our church service. We were doing church, worshiping God, and then they came into our service, and we were talking to them after, and my family, Pastor Todd Moulter, had a great insight. He's like, here we're doing church, and we're confronted with how to be the church. How can we be the church to this couple who needs us? So we're seeing these things. We don't want to do church as usual. We want to be the church. And so it is by God's goodness that he can move us in these ways. Say Yes on Skid Row, we have an inner city ministry for our high school students because we believe it engages, we need to engage them at a young age. They're doing a significant work on Skid Row. And then Salvation Army Transitional Living Center, 40 families right now in our community who, single moms, many of them coming from domestic abuse background, Bridge of Faith Ministries for women emancipated from the foster care system, and Salvation Army. All of these places we believe in on levels that we feel God is calling us to partner. So the beauty of engagement is, how do we start? Well, we get outside the church. We look at the needs in our church, but we get outside of it too. As we look at how we can be engaged in these needs. Our theme verse for our city ministries is Mark 1:41. The leper asked Jesus, if you are willing, will you heal me? And Jesus, moved with compassion, reached out and touched him, and he said, I am willing. He said, be healed. So the question we ask, our CARE acronym here, is what we believe from our biblical foundation of Mark, looking at Jesus' interaction. Compassion, action, reaching out, and education. And when we talk about education, we realize we can't get engaged in the needs around us if we have no idea of what's going on in our city. If the blinders are up, and so much of this has been casting the net, asking the questions, building the relationships to give us that trust level to say, we're calling you because we care and we love you and we're in this city together and we want to serve you. We love God and we want to serve you. So that has been our mission for our care ministries. The question we ask our church that we're really launching this fall has been, are you willing? Are you willing to look outside of yourself to reach out in the name of Jesus? And there are opportunities plenty, but these are the things that challenge us. We don't have it all figured out by any means. It is a journey that we are on. And the reality is that I oftentimes leave the office brokenhearted by the needs I see. But these needs are the same needs that propel us forward. They're the needs that God calls us to meet and challenges us to do something about as believers, to share his love and kindness and grace. So I have 3 community bridge builders who are all lay leaders from our church who are briefly going to share a word with you on their engagement or something that might help you in connecting the church to the city. Janice, Cindy, and Glen Peterson. Come on up. Come on down.
Hi, I'm Janice Gardner, and a few years back, I wasn't involved at WAC, but I wanted to be, and I had been in church my whole life, so what was I going to do? And I heard about Serve Weekend, and I thought it sounded cool. And as a Christian and as a mom, I teetered in between not being aware of what the needs in my community were or being completely overwhelmed by the needs in my community and feeling like there was nothing that I could do. And what Serve Weekend did is it took those needs and broke it down into bite-sized pieces. Here's what it is and here's what you can do. And what it did for our church is it got teams together who then together could kind of get rid of the frustration that we feel as Christians because we can't meet the need, and your heart is to meet that need. Your heart is to take care of that widow or that orphan, but I don't know where they are. I can't drive around and find them. But the church broke it down into projects that we could do together. And the excitement of that group of people doing that project together built lifelong friendships and lifelong commitments to each other, where we're still excited when we see each other at church. And from projects years ago, because we did something together that meant something, that transcended anything that any of us could have done alone. And it is the highlight of the church year for many of us. So the incredible gift of participation in Serve Weekend is so much more for me. I couldn't even tell you that the people that we worked for got as much out of it as I did. I can't even believe that they did. If they did, fabulous. But either way, what we got out of it was incredibly important, and the friendships that we built was important. And if you go after Serve Weekend, when we all get together for pizza, you have this room of people who have worked harder and I don't work that hard every weekend. I work hard on Serve Weekend, and you're tired and you're dirty and you're a mess, but you're so excited. And that has turned itself into something where our church is excited. We're excited about what we can do next and what's going to happen next. So for me, nothing else I'd rather do, and no place else I'd rather be than here, where the opportunity is given to me in a way that I can accept it and I can do something about it. So it's been a blessing, and it's very exciting. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Corning, and as you can tell by Colleen and the way she talks, our church is really good at motivating you to follow your heart. As Christ became more important to me, the first thing I wanted to do was serve, and our church makes it easy to serve. One of the first things that we did, or that I did, was run the food drive for one of the Serve Weekends a couple years ago. And I was born and raised in Whittier, had no idea what was out there, and first was just overwhelmed by the need that I saw. Secondly, the resources that are already in place were amazing. So running the food drive, I was able to deliver to some of the places that Colleen showed you, the Interfaith Food Center, DCSF, Rio Hondo AIDS Project, and got to meet the people that are running the programs. And it just opened up a whole new world for me. I had no idea that any of this existed out there. I think one thing that is important is to have a leader like Colleen. She knows the hearts of the people in our church and is able to see what they're interested in and place them where she thinks that they can serve best. Every year we support and staff the cold weather shelter. That was one of the first places that I volunteered on my own and fell in love with the people there. Just wanted to hang around. I just showed up, and I knew from the first time that I served there that was going to be where I was called. I approached Colleen, and because she knew my heart, she introduced me to people at the Whittier Area Interfaith Council. They're a group of 16 people that run the run the winter shelter, and got more involved there. I'm probably on my third year of helping at the shelter. Have been placed on the board as a chairperson for the cold weather shelter. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a group of about 12 churches that hosts weeks at a time, kind of a rotating situation from church to church. Houses about 40 people through the winter from November to March. So we're just gearing up for that. If anybody here is from the Whittier area and is involved in a church, you may have gotten a flyer or a letter from us asking you to become more involved with the shelter. We're trying to do things a little bit differently this year. We were content for many years just to put a roof over their head for the winter. And this year we're conducting interviews with them during their process, their registration process, hoping to come along beside some of them. Some of them are chronically homeless, and unless we have a lot of funds, we can't do a lot about that. But there are people who can be removed from the situation, and we're trying to stand along beside them and see what their goals are and try and help them along the way to do something differently. So my heart is at the shelter, and I just love serving there, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell you about it.
Thanks. And lastly, Glenn. Thanks, Glenn.
Hi, I'm Glen Peterson. A couple years ago, it became really evident at our church that there were a lot of unemployed people. The economic situation was such that if 10% unemployment in our community meant that about 250 people were showing up at our church on a weekend who were unemployed. And I guess this particularly became obvious to us when on Communion Sunday, when the pastor was talking about the benevolent offering, that there was more money going out than coming in at that time because of unemployed people coming. And a few of us said, we really need to figure out what we can do to help people with their employment situation as much as helping them with a benevolent gift to get them through their rent or to buy food for them. So we started meeting and getting together on the issue of employment. We talked about what we might be able to do. We invited some employers to come. We had some people come, and we had some day-long events for unemployed people. At the same time, the other churches in Whittier, some of these relationships that we have with First Day and with some of the other churches, the ecumenical churches, the mainline denominations, and other evangelical churches, we're also kind of looking at this. We started listening to what they were thinking about doing and how we might even work together. So we pulled together a couple of Saturday events. We pulled together some expertise from our church. In one of our meetings, we talked about maybe we should have a website. And at our next meeting, one of the people in our group who has an expertise in making websites says, well, I put something up. Why don't you take a look at it and see if you like it? So we have a really beautiful website. If you want to look at jobquestministry.net, that was put together by a volunteer, has a bunch of information about that. We've transitioned into a weekly meeting, kind of a job club and employment readiness workshops that we provide for unemployed people, both for people in our church and for people from the community. We draw on some of these community organizations and other churches in the area to help people find jobs. People come in, they're discouraged, that you read the news and there's just aren't any jobs out there. It's obvious because just read the paper. And then we have someone else who comes in and says, hey, I went on an interview 2 weeks ago. I got called back. I'm starting work, I started work last week, and we're really excited for that person. And so that really helps encourage other people to engage in that job search process. I was just going to say really quickly, there's like a wide variety of ways that churches can get engaged in like community with community engagement. The first and most obvious things are, a lot of we heard about today, you go and you pray in the neighborhood and you evangelize and you invite people into your church. Then you move on to ways of providing service. Serve Weekend launched our church into the community, get to know people. Once you get to know people and what the needs are, you start to develop the individual people, helping them find jobs, helping with these kinds of things. Food, shelter, all of this stuff, and then you start developing things in the community. We do what we can do well, and other people do what they can do well. Then you move from there to organizing and advocacy, where you just work together and change the very structures of the community to make that work.
Thanks so much. I'm going to pass it to Art because he has some great words to share with us, but we want to open it up to some questions after. So thank you very much for the privilege of sharing.
Okay, let me All right, good. Colleen's going to help set me up here. And I'm going to share, I think what's important is for us to be able to lay down a foundation. I mean, you just don't jump in and get your church involved in community projects or community activities without, first of all, laying a biblical foundation first for those individuals in order that they might be able to understand why you do what you're going to do. And so as we take a look at this, one of the things that I'm interested in sharing with you, if I, first of all, got to get the view thing right here, go to slideshow, okay, don't want you to see my notes, is the first thing that we need to do is that we need to encounter the Word, okay? We need to encounter the Word. A lot of us know the Word, but have we encountered it? Have we actually been moved and motivated and touched and challenged and convicted? And so when I mean encounter the Word, we need to come to that point in our walk in a relationship with Christ where the Word of God just takes us and shakes us and helps us to look at the world in a completely different perspective. For example, as we think of Matthew 28, 19 and 20, and why am I not getting my notes up here? Bear with me. Okay, that's all right. I don't need notes. So one of the things that we need to understand here, Matthew 28, 19, and 20, we all know it. We can say it by memory. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. The key word is reaching, make disciples of all nations. Well, in traditional churches, all nations means Latinos. If you're in a Caucasian church, Caucasians. If you're in an African American church, African Americans. If you're in a Korean church, it's Koreans. So what we've done is we have taken this term, ta ethnos, which means, in essence, all ethnicities. That is where we get our word ethnics from. And the idea is that what the mandate of Christ is that we're to make disciples of all ethnicities, all nations, all people groups. And we need to break away from our homogeneous thinking in order that we might be able to minister to all of the diverse groups that we find in the city. The second thing, verse that we need to take a look at here is, and why am I struggling here? Okay, there we go. John 13, 34 and 35, again, familiar. A new command I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And of course, the one another's that I need to love are my fellow Latinos, or my fellow whites, or my fellow African Americans or Koreans. Once again, we have a tendency of contextualizing the mandates of Christ to minister to those who are like us. And when you're ministering the city, in a city that is predominantly diverse, then it's important for us to shift our thinking from being homogeneous in nature and makeup of the mandates of Christ as we understand them, so that we can be more ethnically diverse. And then, of course, these verses are easy to recite, and they are relatively easy to live in our homogeneous congregations, right? For the most part. Unless you're Baptist, then you got a lot of splits. But they're difficult to apply in the diverse context of our cities. So you see, until we start laying the biblical foundation and letting our people understand, look, we got to look beyond just ourselves. We got to look beyond just our own clan, our own people group, our own ethnicity. We are called by Christ to make disciples of all ethnicities, and we're called by Christ to love one another as He has loved us. And the one another is just not my own kind, but it's every other kind of person as well. So you need to come to an encounter with the Word. And until you do that, what's going to happen is that the practices or the ministries that you get involved in your community, they're going to become such a burden. Oh my gosh, do I have to go down to that homeless shelter again? When are those people just going to get their act together so we can close that place now? You know, it's going to become a burden. It's not going to become an act of kindness that you have that stems from the conviction that the Spirit of God has laid on your heart to minister to people who are in need, regardless of their socioeconomic diversity, regardless of their educational diversity, regardless of their ethnic diversity. Until you've had an encounter with God, it's academic. And you need to be able to prepare your people for that. The next thing that we need to do is, after we've had an encounter with God, is that we need to see the need. It's important to see the need, to see where you're able to minister to people. Matthew 9:36, Jesus, speaking of Jesus, it says that when he saw the crowds, he had what? Compassion on them, and because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. They were harassed and helpless. Until you come to the point where you can see people who are struggling and who are hurting, and you're just overwhelmed by those burdens, just like Colleen was. I mean, she saw the needs, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's just so many needs. Where do we start? There's nothing that you can do or no attempt that you're going to be able to make to motivate your people to go there to help minister to that need. So you got to be able to see the needs. And of course, how is it that we're able to see those needs? How can we see them? Well, Robert Schuller once said, if you find a need and then meet it, you'll be able to touch people's lives so that you can minister to their hearts. And the reality is that most people that you encounter, and I experienced this a lot because my upbringing is right-wing fundamentalism, and the only evangelism that we ever thought of was knocking on doors. And you got to make your speech real quick because you never know when they're going to slam the door on you, right? Or when you're at church and people would come up to me and they would say, hey, Art, I brought my cousin over and I want you to share the gospel with him. Sure, where is he? Hey, Frank, how do you do, Frank? Hey, come on here. Hey, do you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior? And I would do the evangelistic shuffle. You know what that is, right? They try to walk around me and I just cut them off this way. And then I would continue with the gospel presentation. They'd try to cut me off over here on the left or go around me on this side. I would just step over this way. And each of the way, I'm walking my way back, blocking them from getting around me until I finish the gospel presentation. That just doesn't fly. I didn't win a whole lot of converts, Colleen. I had a lot of great practice at sharing the gospel, that little outline that I'd memorized, but I didn't win a whole lot of converts. And so most individuals will not receive the teaching of the word until they have felt the touching of their wounds. And that's where it all starts. You got to be able to see the need so that you can then begin to minister to the wounds. And so how do you do that? How do you get there? Well, you need to engage your church. And in engaging the church, the one thing that is critical here, we see it in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day that he visits us. Live as servants of God and show proper respect to everyone. Today, we know that as being missional. It's not just doing church, but being church. When I was Colleen's age, it was called lifestyle evangelism. So it doesn't matter what you call it. The idea is that we need to incarnate Christ, the love of Christ. We need to incarnate it in our own lives so that we can show that to other people in the ministries and the things that we do for them. Here are some of the things in which we were able to become actively involved at Sunrise Church as we saw some of the needs. And how do you discover some of those needs? Well, one of the ways that you can discover it is just by working with nonprofits, just like Whittier Area Community Church is working with nonprofits. And the Day Labor Center came as a result of a director of a nonprofit that we had in the Inland Empire. I was having lunch with him, and he said, hey, we just had this gentleman who owns this auto repair shop. And he's got this plot of land, and for years he's been wanting someone to come in and minister to all these day laborers that stand out in front of his business. And do you know anyone? And I said, sure, we can do that. And so as a result of that, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Rancho Cucamonga. And it was a relationship between our church, Sunrise Church, the city of Rancho Cucamonga, this business here, you can see the back of the garage back there where they do all of the work, who gave us a slither of land for $1 a year. The city of Rancho Cucamonga put up the trailers that we needed and the fencing and the tarts, and they got the toilets out there that were necessary for the individuals, and we provided the staff that ran that day labor center. One of the benefits that happen as a result of this, and when you're thinking of ministry, it's not only the individual that you're serving that is blessed by it, but it has an effect on all other relationships. For example, the benefit to the city was that they didn't have people calling them complaining about those darn day labor. When is the city going to do something about those guys and get them off the street? Okay, the city loved it because they weren't receiving any calls. The police department loved it because they weren't constantly having to go over and deal with the day labor center problems. 60 days after we opened up the day labor center, I called the chief of police out there and I asked, hey, how's it going, chief? And he said, Art, he says, I can't believe it. He says, our complaint calls have dropped 95%. He says, I can take the police officers that we were having to send out there to deal with that issue, and now they can deal with other issues of crime that are going on in the city. Another benefit was to the business owners. The business owners loved it because now these guys weren't out there in front looking for work, really hustling work, jumping in the back of trucks uninvited, scaring customers away or making the customers feel like, I really don't want to go and shop there anymore. And it was creating a problem for them. And so once we were able to take the day labor centers and put them in an area that was fenced, they loved it because now their customers weren't harassed any longer. The people in the local community, the residents, loved it. They benefited as well because now the day laborers aren't using their shrubs or their trash cans for their toilets. And so that was a tremendous benefit for the people, and they were just ecstatic about that. The benefit to the day laborers, they got a place where they could go and hang out and stay. They had some shelter. We also had a trailer where we would conduct ESL language classes. We also provided groceries and food distribution and clothing distribution, provided for them a cup of coffee early on in the morning. Some of the businesses in the area would drop off donuts or Twinkies or whatever they would have that was extra, and the guys could come and eat. It also benefited the day laborers, and so now that the scrupulous business guys that would come and hire them and not pay them, now we wouldn't allow those guys to come on the property to hire guys. We says, until you finish paying these guys, you can't use any of our men anymore. The only ones that were upset were the drug pushers and the prostitutes that would hide amongst these people and create a lot of the havoc and a lot of the crime that was going on in the area. But it was a win-win situation for so many individuals as a result of that. Now, were we looking to start a day laborer? No, it's just that we connected with a nonprofit, and the director said, hey, we have a need. Do you know anyone that can minister to that and take care of it? And so that's how that happened. We also provide immigration assistance. When I first went to Sunrise, and they had a Spanish ministry that I was working with and trying to help those folks out. And I realized that if you look around your congregation, you'll see people in your church who have needs that need to be addressed. In this situation, I had a number of individuals that I heard discussions going on about how they had been abused and swindled by individuals who told them that for X thousands of dollars, they could get them their visa and get them legal papers to be here in the United States. And so I said, that's horrible. And I heard that so many times, I finally said, we need to do something about this. We need to be able to provide some kind of immigration service. So I started calling the people that I've networked, that are a part of other coalitions or other groups. And one of my friends of mine said, you need to talk to so-and-so over at World Relief. They got a Hispanic guy over there that goes around and teaches other nonprofits or local churches on how to provide immigration assistance. So through World Relief, we had one of their trainers come out, and they equipped a number of our volunteers to learn how to do immigration assistance, how to fill out the government paperwork in order to begin the people in the process to become legal permanent residents. And so that was a tremendous blessing. And this is a service that we provide for free to the community. And so, and that was an incredible blessing as well. I might add that through all of these ministries, we don't just want to serve the individuals, we want to be able to lead them to Christ. And so we had hundreds, I would say, of day laborers that have come to Christ as a result of those ministries there, which you have since had to close because of funds drying up and the political issues and problems that there are right now in the environment. That those things are just not are frowned upon. But we had hundreds of those guys come to Christ. Some of them went back to Mexico, and we heard back from them later that they started Bible studies from the Bible studies that we gave them, and they started little house churches in Mexico. So that was exciting to see that. And then, of course, through our immigration assistance, we always pray with the individuals afterwards, and because they are so thankful that we're helping them, it's very easy to invite them to a service or to a men's function or to a women's function or to one of the other functions that we would have at the church, which is very non-threatening for them. So we utilize that. That's our immigration assistance program. Then our food ministry. The gentleman there that you see in the blue, his name is Mario. Mario, when he came to Sunrise, he had been a part of a church in Los Angeles that had a large food bank. So he had always had a heart and a passion for the people that are impoverished, that don't even have enough money for food. That has always been his burden. So when he came to Sunrise, he wanted to start a food ministry, and he did. And it's been going on now for about 10 years. It started out, first of all, by us just having food, and people could come by the church from 1:30 till 3:30 on Sunday afternoons, and they could pick up groceries, and we do that every week. We've been doing it every Sunday for 10 years. But once a month, he will take out a team of his people. They will bag groceries that will put them on this trailer, and they go to some of the most impoverished, rough areas in our community. They go into this one street where there's only one way in and one way out. The City of Rialto Police Department will allow no less than 2 squad cars to go into that street. The drug problems, the gang violence, all of the issues that are found there, the City of Rialto only will not allow less than 2 squad cars to go into that police. Our food ministry team has free reign. The moment they see that trailer start pulling into that street, oh my gosh, the kids start running. Mamá, la iglesia está aquí con la comida. Mom, the church is here with the food. And then we've had volunteers that will go door to door and knock on doors. And there will be people that will open the door, tattooed up, obviously prison tattoos, and guys that look like bang-gammers, whether they're from a black gang or a Latino gang or what have you. And when they knock on the door, they kind of look at you like, what do you want? And then we say, hey, we're just here from Sunrise, and we've got some groceries downstairs. Do you know anybody that needs groceries? And then you just see their faces melt. I can't tell you the number of people that have told our workers, we haven't had any food in here for a couple of days, and I didn't know if we were going to have any food today to feed the children. And those people at the door will break down crying because God has done something for them at that moment. So as a result of that, they come down, they get the food, and when we ask them, hey, how can we pray for you folks? And we have a prayer team there, and they pray with the individuals one-on-one. Those that are open to the gospel, we share the gospel with them. Those that aren't, we don't. And we wait later on until they are open. But that's our food ministry. One of the realities of any church that is located in an ethnically diverse community, when you've had an encounter with the Word of God, and you recognize that we need to reach all of the people in our Jerusalem. And of course, Acts 1:8 talks about those concentric circles, the gospel needs to go out. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the outermost parts of the world. Well, in the cities of the world today, the major cities of the world today, the outermost parts of the world has come to our Jerusalem. And so if we are faithful in fulfilling the mandates of Christ in an ethnically diverse community, then our church should reflect that diversity. Sunrise Church is a congregation of 5,000 in our weekly attendance. Did I share this already? I don't know. I'm at an age where I keep repeating myself. As a church of about 5,000 in weekly attendance, and we have no ethnic majority. So it's we have African Americans, whites, Latinos, people from the Pacific Islands, and we have no ethnic majority in our congregation, on our staff, or on our church leadership. So it's a very ethnically diverse church, and we've been very intentional in that diversity. So, connecting your church to the city. Encounter the Word, see the need, and engage your congregation. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and what we'd like to do is field some questions from you, if you have any. Okay? So you can address it either to Colleen or I, and if I don't have the answer for you, I'm sure she will. Okay, Colleen. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Of your multicultural congregation, what kind of cultural service do you have? I mean, each of the cultures have different styles of worship. So how do you deal with the style of worship of a multicultural congregation?
Yeah. Boy, I wish I'd brought a video on that, one of our praise teams had done. But we're very intentional in our worship. We have 3 services, one on Saturday night at 6:30, Sunday morning at 9, Sunday morning at 11. We have 2 departments, if you will. We have the English-speaking department, which is very multi-ethnic, the different people groups that I talked to you about. Then we have a Spanish-speaking congregation where we see that the need that we have to minister to that congregation in their language and cultural context. Okay, so let's just set them aside for right now. Let's take a look at those that are from Africa, those that are from Canada, those that are from Central America and Latin America that attend our English-speaking service. Because all the services are the same. We don't have venues. So it's all the same service at all 3 English-speaking service. And so our worship pastor has been very intentional in trying to develop incorporate different styles of service. So he'll take some of our regular contemporary songs that we have, that most of you probably sing, that are kind of rock driven. You know, that's contemporary Christian music, which you'd hear on Air 1. And he will do some arrangements. So with his worship team that he has, he will have them each incorporate an aspect. They'll sit down, they'll play a song, and they'll say, you know, I kind of want kind of a Latin rhythm here. So he will look over to his drummer or to the percussionist, and he'll say, what can we add here? And so from their knowledge and understanding of their training in music, they will add some of those Latin beats into it. If he's got a keyboardist that can do black gospel, he'll throw in some riffs on the keyboard with regards to that. Same thing with a vocalist. So we try to change the music up to incorporate just a little, not the whole song, but just portions of the song to deal with those different genres, those different styles. And so that really helps to engage the people. The other thing is that most churches, homogeneous ethnic churches, have a culture of worship. Okay? Some of them may raise their hands, they may be very animated, they may bounce around back and forth, you know, they may dance around in the pew or move around or what have you. Well, in the beginning, because the church was predominantly white and those few that were coming in, they kind of accommodated themselves to the established worship culture of our conservative Baptist all-white church early on. But then as we saw more and more African Americans and Hispanics coming in, I was there in 2002 when my pastor told the congregation, look, you know, we all come from different backgrounds and styles of worship and culture in worship. Some of you raise your hands. Some of you like holding your hands in front of you. Some of you like to sway. Some of you just like to stand still with your hands down on your side. When we pray, some of you stand, head up, arms up. Others want to kneel. It's perfectly all right. I'm giving you permission. It's okay for you to utilize whatever worship style you are accustomed to that allows your heart to engage with God. Boy, I tell you what, when he gave that permission, man, that just opened it up. So now we not only have diversity in ethnicities, but diversity in expression of worship from many of those individuals. So those are some of the things that we have done to help make it a multi-ethnic worship service.
How do non-conservative people that like to keep their hands by their side feel about that?
They got to get over it.
Is it okay to adjust to it?
Some of us have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. You know, in the very beginning, it's very difficult. When we first started, it was our pastor tells the story when he first started in '89, when he started making the shift. And it was 6 years for the transition. So it was 6 turbulent years of transition. And actually, he says, you know, a lot of the whites were telling me, what are you doing letting all these blacks come in and take over the church? And a lot of the African Americans and Hispanics are saying, hey, what are you doing allowing these individuals to hold us back? Man, let's move forward. So he felt like he was tied to 2 stallions that were pulling in 2 different directions, and he was trying to maintain the peace. So it was a very turbulent time. In essence, when those that resisted the most finally left, boy, that's when the walls broke down and our growth just exploded, because there was now no longer any resistance. And sometimes it's better to get rid of the bigot and grow than to try to please them and keep it and become stagnant and die as a church. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, sorry for walking late, Professor Pastor. My name is Steve. I do ministry in Gardena, next to Compton over there. And you were sharing about how the church is becoming multi-ethnic. So I was wondering, like, what the role. I just have 2 questions, because I know the first Lausanne Conference, prayer was the major thing that all the scholars and theologians were engaging. In the second Lausanne Conference, it was spiritual warfare. And the third conference, it looks like it's the city, multi-ethnic congregations. I know that, like, right now 60% of the world is Asian, and a lot of churches in the South, Latin America, Africa, and Asia, it's exploding. The church growth is just exploding in thousands of percentages every year.
Right.
So I was wondering what the role of prayer was in terms of your church growing to like 5,000. And then my second question was there like a deliberate effort to make the leadership multi-ethnic on purpose? Because, you know, it looks like the congregation is going to reflect the leadership.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, you know, that's I just forgot the verse. My house shall be called a house of prayer. Ah, help me out. My goodness, this is embarrassing. But anyway, that's our key verse. We have that posted at both entrances. We are big on prayer. Wednesday nights, we're very big on directed prayer. That's our service. It's prayer. We have prayer partners. We have 137 people that at the end of every service, they will, not all 137, but 30, 40, will go down front and people will come forward for individual prayer. So we're very big on prayer. That's very important to us. And part of the concept of intentionality, if you want to become multi-ethnic, multicultural, you have to take some very intentional steps. It's not just a matter of saying, hey, well, we open up our doors to anybody. Anybody that wants to come in can come in and worship, as long as they sing our songs and cut their hair the way we cut ours and dress the way that we do and become completely assimilated into our worship culture. We'll let anybody come in. See, that's not intentional. But a lot of churches start off that way, okay? When you become intentional is when you decide that you're making a commitment, you change your statement of purpose or mission in the church, where you say, we are going to, most statements have, purpose of our church is to glorify God and to reach all peoples with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So when I go in as a consultant, I say, okay, we got to deal with this all people issue. Who do you mean by all people? And so when they can change to we're going to reach all ethnicities, so we're going to reach all people groups, to we're going to reach individuals regardless of their cultural heritage. I don't care how they write it, but they need to write in there what they mean by reaching all peoples. Okay? Then other aspects would be leadership, dealing with staff, as people are starting to come in, putting them on the deacon board, putting them on the elder board, serving as deaconesses, having them positions of high visibility in parking lot ministry, ushers and greeters, praise and worship leaders, praise singers, musicians. We are very intentional about that. Our worship pastor insists that his worship teams be diverse. There's no one team that's all white or that's all black or that's all Latino. It's got to be a mixture of all of those. That's our intentionality. Okay? Same thing with the staff member that oversees our ushers and greeters. He makes sure that at every door, every entrance on our campus, there is a diversity team. So you don't walk up to a door to go either into the facilities or the worship center where you have 2 African Americans, 2 whites, or 2 Latinos. You got a mixed of them. So as you're going in, you see that diversity. And so it's got to go all the way down that way of being intentional. Anyone else?
I was just wondering how, when you were engaging the city, if you have any examples of engaging different ethnic groups that are in your city, that you have Filipinos, you have Vietnamese, Arabs.
Yeah, we basically followed, we only have one language group in there. I don't want to say cultural group, but if we say Hispanics, we put them all together. Because Hispanic is not a culture. Hispanics is anyone from Central or South America, and each one of those national groups has a different twist on their culture. They've got different terminologies, words that they use for the same thing, how they refer to a fruit or something. And so they're not all the same. You know, people from El Salvador are not the same as those from Honduras, as those from Mexico, as those from Argentina, okay? They're all different. But the way that we started ministering to the Latino community is that individuals went to our senior pastor and they said, hey, you know, I got some relatives that have moved into the area and they don't speak English. Do you think we can start a Bible study for them? And that's how it started. So if there's a particular people group that's starting to move in, that's starting to form an enclave, or the term that I heard today for the first time was an immigrant ghetto. If you have some of those individuals that attend your church, then they become the bridge. Those that are bilingual become the bridge to the immigrant community to begin ministering to them. And so that's how we would start it. But the predominant groups in our congregation, immigrant-wise, are Hispanics.
Do you have any examples of you have some, like you probably have Vietnamese around you, don't you?
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yes. Or Arabs too, maybe up here. You know, but I'm just saying, going into those communities and doing something to engage that community. So we talk about connecting to the city type thing. You know, rather than waiting for them to start coming to the church.
Yeah, I think for us, speaking to like the community model of what we've engaged in, I could speak to, we have assessed the need and we are all level at the foot of the cross. And for us, our intentionality has been saying, God, help us meet the needs of this city. When we speak to the ethnic diversity of our community and our surrounding area, what we found is diversity is burst in the needs. I mean, the needs are so great among our community at large. So when I speak to intentionality of reaching certain ethnic groups, our heartbeat has lied in looking at the needs and saying, God, what are we going to do about them? And it has not defined the people groups or the different ethnic groups in our community. We want to be available and we want to meet those needs, but it hasn't been about as much for us. We're going to meet this population, or it has said, God, what's around us, how can we serve, what does that look like? And as I think as God continues to grow us, I think he will continue to challenge us in those ways in bringing people together, knocking down stereotypes that everyone walks with on some level that need to be let go of, that God needs to really rid us of those things. But yeah, I guess that's what I could speak to.
Okay. Let me be more direct. I think you want a very specific answer. You got to have a bridge from the church to the community. So that bridge can be a family member, 1.5, 2.0, that has a burden for his immigrant relatives that are coming here to the United States. That bridge can be a missionary that has come off the field, or the parents of a missionary who visited their kids in the field, and they just have come to love those people, and they come back after a short term, and they see those same people groups in the community, and now they want to start doing at home what their children are doing overseas. And then, of course, there is just the people in your church who, as a result, they're not of that particular ethnic group, but as a result of their interaction with them and building friends with them, a coworker, a fellow student, an international student ministry, somebody is involved in something like that. Maybe individuals that like to host foreign exchange students, and they've built these relationships, and they see these other kids on college campuses where their kids are going, so they want to do something. But there needs to be a link from your church, a bridge into that community so that you can then begin to minister to those folks. Anyone else? Yes.
I have a question about transitioning from ministries of practical care into those spiritual conversations, and just how exactly you do that. I'm thinking of a practical issue in my own church where we have a food distribution program that ministers to 200 families, and it's well-functioning program, but there's been a perception that with the different funding and some of the sources that we have for the food, we can't have any appearance of coercion, that there are any kind of extra steps towards getting the food. You don't have to sit in for a sermon, you don't have to. So how in that kind of situation would you start to build some more of those connections and the idea of just being able to offer at least to pray?
Sure. Well, let me tell you what we do, and then Colleen, you can address what you do. What we do is we have church material available. It's on our campus, right? So they can't tell us what materials we have up on the bulletin boards or brochures that we have those. So we have those things readily available for individuals that may see it and be interested in it. Also, when we have events, we make poster sizes and we have them all over the campus so that people can see that, English and in Spanish, because those are the two primary languages on our campus. So one would be the individual seeing and saying, oye, ¿y eso qué es eso? What's that all about? Well, now they've asked, right? So we can tell them and we can invite them. Another way that we do that is that we pray with them. Is there any way that is there anything any prayer request that you might have? So that's another thing that we do. And then if we have special events, if we've got a concert coming up, or like what we're doing with Halloween, with our Family Fusion programs that we've got for the kids or something like that, then we invite them to those events. And then now they're not with this thing that we're prevented from sharing the gospel, but now they've come to that event on their own. They're on our church campus. Now we're freer to share the gospel with them. Colleen.
We have a benevolent ministry where our doors are open Tuesdays and Thursdays to families in need in our city. And it is very different if they come onto your church campus. As we hear their stories and ask their need, with that we believe a huge part of that, of what we can provide for them as followers of God, is prayer. And so in my time on staff, I think of this, I have never had anyone turn me down for prayer. And not in a way of aggressive, let me pray for you, but because we care. And I think we try and encourage an atmosphere of openness and vulnerability of our church lay leaders. I look at the people that shared here. I mean, to be able to feel comfortable sharing a bit of their story with God, to feel the freedom to share a bit of what God is doing in their lives. And there are settings where an opportunity for praying for each other can come up, and there's others where sometimes where you walk away saying, could we have? And I think we're always looking for ways to love well. And sometimes there are opportunities, and sometimes we take them, and sometimes we don't. But I think we really try to point people to God. And how do we do that? Well, through prayer, through connecting them to a resource that we feel would be a next practical step in their spiritual journey. Like Art was sharing, we have different resources available at our church, that New Testament's on hand, kind of walking you through how to even say yes to God, what that means, to make a lot of those resources available as they're on our campus or as we're in the community. So, yeah.
Okay, no other questions?
Are you seeing this modeled anywhere outside of the U.S. yet, as other churches caught on?
Our heart is someday, in our long-term plan, is to be in some way, in some capacity, in missions in Europe. And we're seeing a decline in Christianity. The world is seeing a decline in Christianity. And when you go out there, you see the churches have really, they might have ideas, but they don't know quite how to put it into practice, doing what you guys are doing here.
Are you talking about the multi-ethnic church model?
Yeah, because like places, for example, in France, they've got, that is their main problem. They don't know how to deal with all of the different types of people that are in their country. The government's in distress about this because they really believe in the philosophy of open-mindedness, but without any type of religion. So then they basically have allowed the doors in, and now they got a problem because everybody's fighting, and nobody knows what to, even the French people don't like the immigrants coming and taking over, but the immigrants basically now have a home and have established their own. So what we think is a great opportunity to now come in and with this type of model, and come in and teach the church, or maybe bring the model in, hey, the church needs to go outside of its four walls now, and now the church needs to meet the needs of the community, and it'll be something that a country like France has never seen before. They've always seen the institutional, type of religion, but they've never seen where you're actually going out amongst the people and serving the needs that are there. And then I think the government will be in a kind of quandary. I think it's a great strategy, because this is going to be really a help to them if this attitude you guys have here with your church is brought in Europe. And we'd like to see something like that planted sometime in the near future, but it's exciting to think about doing this model somewhere else. I know we have the great need here, but some of us are going to have a heart to go maybe abroad and do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think in all of the urban cities, it's that way. If we go in, and we've heard some of the speakers share already, if you go in very, like I did when I first grew up, it's, turn or burn, baby. Well, who are you? What kind of God do you have? It's not going to go very far. And so our whole concept, of how to share Christ, how to, first demonstrate the love of Christ through good deeds, through acts of kindness, to gain the opportunity to develop a relationship and a friendship with that person so that you can then share with them. That's a long process, but yeah, it's, I don't personally know of any churches. You guys have been involved in missions.
Have you been to France? Are you familiar with the church there? Yeah. Churches I've been to in France are all multi-ethnic. You hardly have any French people. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, but I need to bring in some French.
Yeah.
Because they're all Africans and
Yes.
Asians and Middle Easterners. But they're generally, 15 people, 25 people. Oh, I guess I've been in some bigger ones, but not here.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Is Hillsong pretty diverse in London and
I don't know.
And I've been there.
I don't know.
I'm in London. Yeah, it's a lot of young people. And mostly it's young people. I never thought about how diverse it was. I think a person from any culture would be happy as long as they can jump up and down for an hour.
Yes. Get your aerobics in church, man. That's great.
I don't
Hi.
have much energy.
Yeah. Someone else. Let me just give a little pitch for an online magazine that I have. If you have more of an interest in multi-ethnic, multicultural local church ministry, and you'd like to learn more about it, let me encourage you to go to unityinchristmagazine.com. unityinchristmagazine.com. And we have scholars, we've got the academics, and we also have a lot of practitioners that talk about all things multi-ethnic. So let me encourage you to visit that site and see if there's something that you can learn. unityinchristmagazine.com. Okay, well, thank you. Look at that. We are right on time. That's wonderful. Well, it's been a joy being able to share with you here, and we pray that the Lord would use you mightily in reaching your cities for Christ. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.